Hi everyone, so my name is Dr. Amelia Patillo and I am a naturopathic doctor here in Victoria, BC. I practice at the Lansdowne Naturopathic Centre, which is in the Lansdowne Professional Building on the corner of Shelburne and Hillside here in town. So today I'm very excited to be presenting to you a topic that I am very passionate about, and that is nutrition and herbs to help build our body's resilience to stress and anxiety. And I have to say, since the COVID pandemic began back in March, I have seen an increase in the number of people that are coming to me for stress and anxiety related concerns. I think the world is stressful and anxiety provoking as it is, and then we've added the COVID-19 pandemic on top of that, and it's just something that occupies a lot of our thoughts on a day-to-day basis, and it really is pushing us a bit to a tipping point, and people are finding that the stress and anxiety levels that they experience have been higher for many different reasons. And while I'm certainly not suggesting that we can control what's going on around us in the world, we cannot do that. There are a number of strategies that we can use to kind of help build our body's resilience to that stress and anxiety. And I'll touch on a few of those things today. And this is a topic I could probably talk about for hours. So we'll just kind of talk about my favorites today. And as a disclaimer before we get started into this presentation, none of this is intended to be taken as medical advice today. This is all for educational purposes. If you are experiencing an increase in stress and anxiety, I really do suggest that you talk to your trusted healthcare practitioner and create a plan that's suited to your own individual needs. Okay, so before we dive into the nutrition and the herbs, there are just a couple lifestyle things that I do want to mention, just because that is so important. We can't just be loading you up with herbs, or even if you're working on your diet or taking supplements, the lifestyle piece is really important, especially for that mind-body connection. So what I suggest is, if you're able to take 10 minutes of your day every day for you, and doing things that nourish your soul and refill your cup. That can be, that'll look different for everybody, but for some people that might be taking a 10-minute walk on your lunch break to get some fresh air and maybe a bit of sunshine if it's out. For others, that might mean calling a friend or a family member. It might look like taking a long bath at the end of a hard day and just unwinding with a good book. And for other people, that's exercise, and whether that's doing a bit of yoga at home, doing some home workouts, it might be going for a run or a hike. Whatever you need to do, I am here giving you permission today to take 10 minutes for yourself each day at least, to do those things that really do nourish you. Okay, and then another thing that I do like to mention to a lot of people, and by all means, it is not for everyone, but I have found that a lot of people get significant benefit from this, and that is guided meditations. So this is mindfulness meditations. I personally like to use the apps on my phone. I find it's just an easy way to access meditation, and I just plug my headphones in and lay down for 5 or 10 minutes and do the guided meditations. But I've seen in both myself and in my patients that there's a significant reduction in stress and anxiety when people are doing this regularly. And I love it too, because at the end of the day, it's something that is free and it's coming from within. It's not you relying on a supplement, it's not you relying on a herb, it's not even you relying on nutrition. It's literally coming from inside. And I think that's quite a cool thing. Okay. So to dive into nutrition first, just because we don't have too much time here today, there's many different directions that we could kind of take this, and I think it's important to note that I really don't emphasize a one size fits all when it comes to diet for my patients. That's just not how we work as human beings. Everyone has different food preferences, food sensitivities, food allergies, and just different individual needs based on your own metabolism and makeup. So really there is I'm never pushing one diet over another. That being said, you really can't go wrong with eating whole foods and focusing on that and limiting your processed and refined foods. I find most people, when they focus on those things, do feel better. I wouldn't call that a diet though. But when it comes to balancing our stress hormones and calming anxiety, the thing that I probably focus on the most is actually blood sugar balancing. So what happens is we've got our adrenal glands. I don't know, you may have heard of them. They're two small little triangular glands that sit on top of our kidneys and our back. And to really simplify it, our adrenal glands are essentially in charge of regulating our stress response. And that's extremely simplified, but for the purpose of this presentation, we'll just keep it at that. And we can have an overactive adrenal gland, we can have an underactive adrenal gland. And chronic stress really plays into this. With acute stress, when we're getting that kind of moment where we're feeling a lot of adrenaline pumping, cortisol surges, and that'll be kind of like an overactive adrenal gland. We'll get high levels of cortisol. But over time, with chronic stress, and this is chronic stress in many different forms. It can be psychological stress, it can be emotional stress, it can be even physical stress, like over-exercising. What happens is we can actually kind of deplete our body's ability to regulate cortisol, and this leads us to what is known in kind of the natural health world as adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysregulation, to get a little technical. And so when it comes to our adrenal health, that is like when we're dealing with chronic stress, our adrenal glands are very much affected, and so is our nervous system too. I won't leave out the nervous system because that's an important piece of that. But focusing on balancing our blood sugars is very important when we're looking at adrenal health. Our adrenals love stable blood sugar levels. And so that's kind of where that's what I like to talk about most when it comes to at least people who are under a lot of stress. So when looking at balancing our blood sugars, there's three main areas that I get my patients to focus on, and that is fiber, healthy fats, and good quality protein. And so when we're looking at fiber really slows down that kind of blood sugar spike and crash, kind of levels out that curve and slows the absorption of glucose into the body. And so when we're looking at fiber, I love my patients to be getting that from their diet if they can. So a lot of our fruits and veggies are high in fiber, as is things like ground flaxseed, chia seed, nuts and seeds, beans, legumes like lentils. Those are all great sources of fiber. And another thing that's really cool about fiber is it actually feeds our good gut bacteria. And what we know now is that 90% of our body's serotonin, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter in our nervous system, in our brains, is actually produced in the gut. And so having a healthy gut microbiome and a healthy gut function is really crucial to our mental health as well. So fiber, I try and get my patients, if they can, to be doing fiber with each meal. One thing, if people are doing smoothies in the morning, just add a couple tablespoons of ground flax, add a couple tablespoons of chia seeds if you have them, and that can be a good way to get fiber in. Okay, so next I will talk about healthy fats. And so again, like the fiber, healthy fat is going to slow your body's absorption of the sugars and basically keep that blood sugar stable throughout the day. And healthy fats, I like to get my patients to focus on, again, things from whole foods. So if they can, that's coming from nuts and seeds, avocados, even things like coconut oil, or really good extra virgin olive oil. That's a good source of healthy fat. You can take supplements, like, so for instance, omega-3 fatty acids, which have been shown to be helpful in anxiety and specifically more depression too. But even if you're getting that from your diet from fish, that's a great source. So for instance, looking at things like salmon. So I like small fishes just because they tend to have less toxicity built up in them. So things like mackerel or Sardines are another good choice. A bit about protein. So protein, in addition to the fiber and the fat, is another thing that will help keep your blood sugar quite stable throughout the day. And I especially like to emphasize getting a bit of protein in the morning at breakfast is a really good idea, just because if you're having a blood sugar spike and then crash, you're going to feel pretty crappy for the rest of the day. The other thing that's quite cool is protein and amino acids, which are these building blocks in protein that make up the protein. Those are precursors to our body's own neurotransmitters that are those chemical messengers in the brain that help regulate mood and emotions. And so specifically for people who are dealing with mood disorders, getting adequate protein throughout the day, specifically in the morning, again, can really help set the tone for the rest of the day. Also, when it comes to my patients specifically with anxiety, I really suggest either taking a break from, reducing, or cutting out coffee or caffeine in particular. Decaf tends to be okay for most people, but a lot of people find that if they tend towards anxiety, coffee just aggravates that. And again, yeah, decaf is usually fine, or switching to something like matcha green tea or just regular green tea that has the calming amino acid L-theanine in it. That is a great option. And then lastly, I just suggest that people really reduce their refined sugar intake. So this is anything that has white sugar, brown sugar, even cane sugar is not the best if it's without fiber and fat and protein. These are things that are gonna, again, spike your blood sugar, cause the crashes. Your adrenal glands hate that. Your anxiety, if you're anxious, hates that. So reducing the refined sugars is a good idea. And then just to touch on a couple supplements that may be indicated for someone who's quite stressed. There are a couple nutrients that our adrenal glands use up when we are under periods of stress, and that is magnesium, vitamin C, and some of our B vitamins, particularly B5. So oftentimes my patients who are quite stressed, kind of in that adrenal fatigue area, or we know they're going to be going through periods of stress. This is like students going through exam periods. I will get them on a good quality vitamin C, a B complex, again, making sure there's vitamin B5 in there. And then magnesium glycinate is one of my favorite forms of magnesium. That glycine that's attached to the magnesium is a calming neurotransmitter in our brain. So for people who are anxious or have trouble sleeping, that is a really good option. Okay, so now we're going to dive into herbs for stress and anxiety, and this is my favorite topic. I love herbal medicine. I use it a lot in my practice. I just find it such a gentle yet effective form of medicine, and I see great results, particularly with stress and anxiety, actually. So when looking at herbs for stress and anxiety, there's kind of two categories of herbs that I like to use. One being herbal adaptogens. An adaptogen is essentially a herb that helps build your body's resilience to stress and helps your body handle the physiological effects of stress a little better. And then the other category is Nervines. And so we've got Nervine tonics and Nervine relaxants, which I'll get into more detail. But we'll start with the adaptogens. And so again, this is a really difficult thing for me to narrow down. I use a lot of herbal adaptogens in my practice, and it does really come down to the individual and determining what their individual needs are and if I think a herb would be a good match for them on many different levels. But yes, these are three that I'll talk about today that are ones that I do tend to use a lot. So holy basil or Tulsi is the first herb, and this herb actually has a pretty pleasant taste. It is a little bit earthy, a little bit peppery, and has a mild clove flavor. And not all herbs taste good at all. So when we can find a herb that tastes good, I do like to use it a fair bit. And so this is actually a really good herb if you are a tea drinker to drink in that form. There are companies that even sell it in pre-made tea bags, or you can buy the bulk herb and use it as a tea on its own, or add it to other herbs as well. And so with Tulsi, there's actually been some studies comparing it to diazepam, which is an anxiety medication, as well as some antidepressants, and it is shown to be just as effective as those medications in those conditions. So as an adaptogen, it does also help. It helps your body build that resilience to stress and adapt to those negative effects of stress. And again, tea is my favorite form of it. You can find it in capsules, you can find it in tinctures. I just find that as a tea, it's a nice way to consume it. Okay, so next herb is another one of my favorites, and that is ashwagandha, or Withania somnifera. This is a herb that I leaned on a lot in my naturopathic medical education as I was going through those rigorous 4 years of naturopathic medical school. It is a good one, especially for people who do tend to have stress with anxiety. So some of the adaptogenic herbs that I do use are a little bit more stimulating, and some people find that their anxiety can be triggered by those herbs. So ashwagandha is one. If I've got a person who is stressed and anxious, is one that I use. It is not the best tasting herb, I will be completely honest. So if I'm using it, sometimes I'll use it in an alcohol extract or a tincture, but oftentimes I'm using like a concentrated extract in a capsule. And I find that that's just the most effective way to use it. You can use it in a powder and add it to smoothies, but again, if you add a bit too much, the flavor is just not great. Okay, so that's ashwagandha. Lastly, when we're talking about adaptogens, reishi mushroom, and so this is not a herb, this is a mushroom. Reishi mushroom is a medicinal mushroom that I use a fair bit. This one is really good for people who are very much in their heads and can't bring themselves to be more present in their bodies. So people who need a bit of grounding from the mind. So particularly my students, people who are very much studying a lot and they get kind of caught in this cycle in their head. Reishi is a good one for that. It is an adaptogen, so it is good for stress and building resilience to that stress, to the negative effects of stress. Additionally, though, it is what we call an immunomodulator. Helps to basically support the normal functioning of our immune systems. And at this time of year, that is a great thing to have. And so it does boost the immune system, you could say. And with reishi, I like to do it in the powder form. In particular, I like to buy what we call dual extract. So it's a water extract and an alcohol extract mixed together in a powder. You just get the full spectrum of medicinal benefits from the mushroom that way. Okay, now moving on to Nervines. So when looking at Nervines, there are the Nervine tonics, which are going to be nourishing and strengthening to basically an exhausted nervous system. And so 2 herbs in this category that I love are something called milky oat tops or milky oat seed. This is literally the tops of the oat plant that at a certain time of year they get milky. And this is again one of my favorite Nervines to use. I find it works very well for people who are exhausted, depleted, and anxious. Another great Nervine tonic is something called Gotu Kola, or Centella asiatica is the Latin name. Again, a great herb for those who are anxious and depleted and need more of a nourishing Nervine. Then we get into the Nervine relaxants. So for people who are anxious all the time, they find that they're getting lots of heart palpitations, they can't sleep, Nervine relaxants are a great option. Lots of herbs in this category, and I find that a lot of these Nervine relaxants actually make really good teas. So that's one of my favorite ways to prescribe this form of medicine. And so in this category we have lavender, we've got chamomile, we've got lemon balm, we've got skullcap. those are, I mean, there's way more, but those are the ones that I use a lot and love. All right, so that concludes our little presentation today to kind of summarize when it comes to nutrition for stress and anxiety. Decrease those refined sugars and caffeine. Focus on fat, fiber, and protein at every meal to stabilize your blood sugars. Omega-3 supplementation can be helpful, as well as magnesium glycinate, B complex with B5, and vitamin C to feed the adrenal glands. And then with the herbs, we've got our adaptogens and our nervines. We've got holy basil, ashwagandha, and reishi as adaptogens, and we've got milky oat and gotu kola as our nervine tonics, and chamomile, lemon balm, lavender, and skullcap as our nervine relaxants. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. I know it's going to look different this year, but wishing you and your family all the best. Thank you. Bye.